Hello everyone. Today our guest is Michael Wiegel, the guy who fixes entrepreneurs' bad habits faster than you can say business guru. Michael helps entrepreneurs achieve self-awareness by transforming behavioral and communication patterns by using neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and systemic work. Welcome to Lexter Woodley Interviews. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to introduce you just the way you present yourself online. Here it goes. My name is Michael Wiegel, and I specialize in breaking patterns in behavior and communication among entrepreneurs who are not achieving their business results. Now, as an entrepreneur myself, I'm curious, what do you often witness us struggling with?
That's actually a good question. I'm also an entrepreneur, so I kind of speak from experience, but I see a lot of things. Time management is one, because most entrepreneurs have a lot of things on their mind, a lot of jobs to fulfill, people to tend to, meetings to attend, agendas to manage. So it's also about priorities, business versus me time versus time for the family, delegating tasks, setting boundaries, avoiding conflicts or meeting a lot of conflicts. So there's a lot to it, and it's obviously different for every entrepreneur specifically, but yeah.
So you're mentioning a bunch of tasks, and entrepreneurs, we excel in managing multiple tasks simultaneously. How do you teach them to stay sane in the chaos?
Sanity, I like the word. Well, I think the first thing is what I look at is how do you go about setting priorities? That's one of the big ones, right? At least for me, from a personal experience. Second is I look at patterns of behavior and communication. So if you're experiencing a lot of stress or difficulties delegating, setting boundaries, what I do is I look at the patterns underlying the behavior and how they grew into your system from a young age. Because what most people don't realize is we're pretty good at recognizing patterns. The difficulty usually starts when we get to ask ourselves the questions, what is the pattern about? What does it really say? And the real challenge comes when we start looking at ourselves, because most of the patterns is something we have to do.
And how does systemic work play a role in this?
That's a good question. Systemic work what it really does, it looks at the foundation, at the family we were born in, because we were all born at some point. And regardless of how you grew up with or without both parents, but they taught you a lot of values, belief systems, just like you were taught from your grandparents, your teachers. And what we do with systemic work is we look at how those patterns and dynamics you saw, maybe between your parents, maybe you witnessed divorce, abuse in any kind of way, can be alcohol, can be verbal, physical, you name it. And all of those patterns on a subconscious level form us. They create, partially at least, our identity. And they form the habits that we still perform to this day. So, for example, if I can share my own experience for a bit, I am really good at working really hard. And I excelled in doing various things at the same time. Working hard at the gym, working hard on my business, several appointments on one day, and consuming a lot of knowledge at the same time. So I was reading 3, 4, 5 books at the same time. And I mean, for the listeners getting tired already by hearing me sum up what I did.
Yeah, and it sounds like, it doesn't sound that bad. It seems like you're going to say, but it doesn't sound bad.
A but. Because what it also did is I neglected my body and my health because I was constantly worrying about, am I good enough? So the driving factor behind the pattern was proving that I was good enough for, in this case, on a subconscious level, my father. Because, and I have a good relationship with my father, always had. And he also knows how to work hard. He had to prove himself from a very young age. And I know the same dynamic. So on a subconscious level, I copied the same behavior. And I started to prove myself by working really, really hard. And when I realized it, I could also see that it doesn't necessarily has to be my pattern, right? Because on the one hand, it served me because it made me excel and consume knowledge like no other. But on the other hand, the challenge for me, so I like to say every gift has its price, right? So the gift that I got was being able to work really hard, to consume knowledge, and to excel in a lot of things at the same time. The price I paid was neglecting myself and forgetting to care for myself. And eventually, that led to a burnout, a lot of stress, and not being able to do anything anymore.
And if you can't do anything anymore, then the hard work that you have been doing
was all for nothing. Or not for nothing is a bit extreme maybe, but the price was too high. So the key is you don't have to delete anything of the past, if you know what I mean. But the key is to find balance between the price you pay, because everything in life has a price, right? You know as well from your own experience. But the key is to find balance between the gift you have received from life and utilizing it in the way that suits you, and paying the price at the right time. And paying the price for me, for example, is inviting myself to relax, to game, to work out, to do just nothing sometimes.
So when you talk to entrepreneurs, you actually help them see, how do you break it down to them that they could be their own worst enemy in achieving their goals?
I find I'm a proponent of the direct approach. So you will usually not find me sugarcoating it. Especially with entrepreneurs, I found that they usually are best at taking it the way it is. And sometimes there's no subtle way around it. Sometimes you have to just break it to them. Like, hey, I'm sorry, but you actually are the problem. And that's also the good news, because it's actually easier to fix if you are the problem. Because what we tend to do is we tend to look to external factors, right? And that's what I also see with a lot of people, not just entrepreneurs, but people in general. It's easier to look outside of ourselves when facing problems, to blame someone else. And it's not even a conscious process. It's what happens on a subconscious level. And once you realize that you're accountable and you're in 99% of the times you are responsible for your own failings, that's when you also learn that you are able to fix it much easier. Because we cannot control outside events, but we can control our perception of them, right?
And indeed, somewhere it feels more, it's better if you know that it's somewhere in your own hands, like in your own control. Yeah.
And that's what I try to teach entrepreneurs mostly. One of the first things we talk about is accountability, and where do you really get to take your influence on your own process. And that's on the inside, right? So if you are looking at a pattern, the first thing I do is to turn inwards. So we analyze the pattern, and not on a systemic level, like through a diagram. It's usually just one-on-one sessions. And we look at the deeper level. So where did you grow up? What did your parents teach you? What are you doing on a deeper subconscious level? And once you become aware of that, that's where the magic happens.
Now, why entrepreneurs, though, Michael? Are we really that much of a handful?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
But only because you are human. And aren't humans in general a handful? And that's also where for me, what I like about entrepreneurs is I recognize a couple of core values in a lot of entrepreneurs that are also important for me. So, for example, I like freedom. Freedom is one of the core values for a lot of entrepreneurs. They're usually full of initiative, independent thinkers, curious, and solution focused. And it's usually born out of necessity. So I like working with people with that kind of mindset. And I find that they are also very oriented towards personal growth. So that's actually what makes it fun to work with entrepreneurs.
You are big on mindset development, and you wrote online that mindset development is a key aspect of your work. What are some practical steps entrepreneurs can take to cultivate a growth-orientated mindset?
That's a good question, actually. I think the first thing is kind of what we already discussed. That is looking at where you have the influence and where you don't. So what I say to people is make a list of any problem you are facing at the moment and write down 2 rows. The first row is I have influence, and the second row is I don't have influence. Scratch anything in the second row and focus on the things you can solve. So what we like to do is we like to give a lot of energy to the things we cannot control. But if you can accept the things you can't control, it makes a lot of room to focus on the things you can control. So that's the first step. The second step is to look at your own goals. So what are your goals and why are you setting them? So what is the main driver behind your goals? So are you trying to prove something? Is it internally driven or is it externally driven? Yeah, I think I like the question. I'm looking for a third one because mindset is also, it's a lot about awareness, and from awareness comes practicality. So the first one is control versus out of control and acceptance of that. The second one would be, I think, being grateful for what you already have. Instead of, so the mindset would be, the question you can ask yourself is, how do I phrase this best as possible? So when it comes to goal setting, right? It's about having more of something, having more money, having more status.
More clients,
but again, external things. So why don't you take the time out of your day to think about the goals and look at how can you contribute? Not only to yourself, but to your clients.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
So how can you create more value towards the clients?
Yeah, because it shifts the focus towards your own goal, from your own goal towards how can I serve the client or the other people better, which makes you more oriented towards how can I help them versus how can I serve my own goals. And what I found for most entrepreneurs, when they make that shift, so not from focus on own goals to goals of the clients, to adding value, that's also when they find it easier to find new clients to reach their goals. Because in adding value is something so important to most people, but we don't seem to realize it.
Yeah. I'm thinking, though, adding value outside of what you perhaps already give to your clients, that also means more time that you need. So time investment. And I can imagine perhaps that entrepreneurs are like, I'm already, limited in my time, restrained. What will you say? What will you say about that?
So time management is an issue for almost every entrepreneur, especially when you're starting, right? Because usually you're doing everything by yourself. So it sort of depends on where you are in your entrepreneurial journey. Because if you're a starter, you basically have no choice but to do everything yourself. So that's when setting priorities becomes really important. So how do you set your priorities and why are those your priorities, right? So that's also thinking about long term. So why are your priorities as they are? And how can you teach yourself by learning from others, from podcasts, from YouTube, from whatever, to make a more realistic distribution of your time? Make sense? And once you go a little bit further in your journey as an entrepreneur, you might get a VA or an employee. And then the struggle usually becomes, how do I delegate? What do I delegate? And if I'm finding myself having trouble delegating tasks, why is that? And it's usually a pattern you see in your day-to-day life as well. So that's where if people are asking themselves, how can I identify the pattern? You can usually identify the pattern by looking at other facets of your life, right? So if you're having difficulty delegating tasks to employees, it usually shines through in your workout, whether you are in a team sport or in your relationship. Because it's usually the underlying pattern could be something like having learned to do it all by yourself because you, on a subconscious level, cannot trust anyone else.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah. So really with entrepreneurship, you always kind of need to shine the light on other aspects of their lives. It seems like, right? It's not isolated like, your mindfulness or your mindset in business. Yeah. No. How does it also come through in other aspects? So gratitude, I know you're also big on that. You're big on goal setting. Could you tell me how that comes together with the mind setting?
Yeah.
Mindset.
So I like to teach people how to create a ritual that works for them. So I don't have one particular ritual that works for everybody because I don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach, right? So when I coach clients, every time is different per client because like I said, there is no one size fits all. There are a couple of underlying theories in general that you can apply, but the practical implication of it's always different. But what I teach them is to get some sort of structure, some sort of ritual to start the day, for example, with gratitude or with a bit of meditation. Because what it does, it makes you grateful for what you already have in life. Meditation calms the mind. It has been proven scientifically, so that is actually nice for most people. For myself as well, because I tend to be more of a skeptical mind, which is pretty ironically considering I do systemic work and neurolinguistic programming, which are not scientifically proven. And then the mindset is, what I usually do is I recommend a couple of books. And I quote a lot of stoic philosophers. Marcus Aurelius is one of my favorites. Seneca, Epictetus. And what I try to embody and to convey to other entrepreneurs is, yes, your business is important. But as soon as you neglect your body and your physical and your emotional, your mental health, the business is actually not the first thing to go, but it definitely is going to go at a certain point. So why don't we start looking now at the patterns you are not consciously aware of, making them aware, and in the awareness that's also where the possibility for change happens, right? And one of the harder lessons for most people is that you cannot fix everything. That's a disappointment for a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah, but there's also good news because as our awareness grows, so for example, if I take my own pattern, one of the patterns I know really well is, like I said before, I tend to work really hard. And when I say work hard, I go all the way. Like when I'm fully in the pattern, I will work out 6 days a week. I will work 12 hours a day. I can keep it up for 6, 7, 8 weeks. That's what I used to do. But what I know now is I am much more aware of the pattern and on the behaviors I display when I'm in the pattern, right? So what I learned to listen to my body, but also to listen to my own thoughts on a conscious level. So what we usually don't do is ask ourselves, what am I thinking right now and how am I feeling right now? So what is my body and my subconscious mind telling me?
And you are deliberately asking yourself on a daily basis.
Yeah. And my process is what I do before I go to sleep. I write a couple of minutes and I write down, it's not actually a journal. It's just writing down my thought process. What happened during the day? What went right? What can I improve? And what am I feeling right now? Which helps me become aware of where I am in my own process. And so the disappointment is not all patterns can be fixed. But the good news is when you become aware, you are also able to step out of it. right? Because then it becomes a conscious choice. Am I going to repeat the same pattern, or am I going to change my behavior?
So do you then look back on what you've written every few days to see if they're...
Depends, every couple of weeks.
Yeah. And then, go ahead. Then you see the pattern and then you're like, okay, next day I need to do better, or next week I need to do better. How do you tend to do that?
I'm currently at the point that usually I know I'm in the pattern within a day or sometimes a couple of hours. So, but it has taken me the better part of 5 years to get to that point. So it's also a process that takes time, right? Because we all like to think that change happened yesterday. At least that's my wish. I mean, I'm all about results, and I prefer results fast because I like change. But change takes time it takes time to really land on a subconscious level. And in the beginning, it's hard work because you have to make something that is not conscious yet. You have to make it conscious. So it requires effort on a daily or at least weekly basis. And to become aware, you can write down your thoughts, your feelings, and what are you doing, your actions. So it's a way of taking some distance and reflecting on it.
I can imagine that this is what you suggest entrepreneurs to do as well.
I help them with it, and in my coaching, we discussed it. We discuss it every week. So, how has your week been? How were you feeling? What was your mindset? So mindset. It's not all about the great stoic philosophers and what they can teach us, although they can teach us a lot. But it's also about reflecting back and seeing how you can grow from there. It's not about judging oneself, because that's also easy, right? Most entrepreneurs, most people are really good at judging themselves.
Isn't that good sometimes? Like, judging is also like, you didn't do well. Come on, you were a bit lazy those few days perhaps. Or isn't that maybe a good thing to get you a bit fired up and do better?
I think it's good to be critical at yourself. But for me, there's a difference between being judgmental at yourself, because there's in the language itself, there's a negative connotation, right? And what I like to do is I frame it on a more positive way without taking away the accountability. So accountability is not about pointing the finger or being judgmental. Accountability is looking at failures not as failures, but as opportunities to learn, right? So Edison said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I found 10,000 ways. It doesn't work. And that's the mentality that entrepreneurs usually on a subconscious level already have, or are pretty prone to develop. Because as an entrepreneur, you have to learn from your mistakes. But once you start looking at them not as mistakes, but as opportunities to learn, that's where on a subconscious level, it adds an extra positive element, because it's no longer a judgment. It's positively framed opportunities to learn, right?
That's an interesting way of looking at it, because indeed it's about how you talk to yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can be maybe too down on yourself and discourage yourself to look for the opportunities. Indeed,
it's easy if you make mistakes. Judging yourself, I know the self-talk really well. I can be really judgmental on myself, but it doesn't help. So that's also where the writing and the becoming aware of your self-talk comes in. And I'm not sure whose quote it is. It's definitely not mine. I wish I had thought about it. But if you were to talk to your friends the way you are able to talk to yourself negatively, how many friends would you still have? Right? And you can also, if you frame it more positively, you can also turn it around. Would you talk to yourself? Would you talk to your friends the way you talk to yourself? If your answer is no, then maybe there are some things you can change in your self-talk.
How about entrepreneurs that only have too much of a self-talk, like, oh, you're doing great, but the results suck. And when you talk to them, they're like, yeah, it's going to work, and I'm just good at it. And you're like, you're not that good at it. Like, the self-talk is just
Or
unrealistic, actually.
are we talking about entrepreneurs who are aware?
I'm actually talking about the entrepreneur, I guess, who are not aware that the self-talk is really off.
So a quote that I really like is, the first step in solving a problem is realizing there is one in the first place. So it's actually difficult giving feedback to people who don't realize they have a problem. That's why I only work with people who are asking actively for help. So I can give someone feedback, but it's up to them to take it in, right? To receive it, to be able to receive it. So there's a couple of aspects to it. If someone is open to feedback and to look at, to take it in and to change, then we can have a conversation about it. And then I'm actually able to help you. If you're not able to reflect on yourself and just go blindly forward without taking in any signals from your environment, from people who care about you, right? Then it becomes difficult. And I believe that those are usually the people who will eventually meet the wall one point, sooner or later. Yeah.
Can you share a success story of an entrepreneur that had an aha moment after talking with you, and that their business has gone through the roof?
Yeah, there's one that comes to mind. It's actually pretty recent. A couple of months ago, I had a female entrepreneur in my coaching, and she came to me because she had a difficulty, that's already what she knew, of setting boundaries. She was the proverbial doormat for everyone, right? And it was setting boundaries and not being able to say no, which usually go hand in hand with another, right? So we figured out what the underlying pattern was. So there's the conscious level is, I'm not setting boundaries, I'm not saying no. And the question is, where did the pattern come from? And turned out that she had witnessed in her early childhood years her own mother not being able to say no, not being able to say boundaries. She witnessed a lot of, how do you put it mildly, difficult things in her childhood. And she was forced at a really young age to take care of her mother, which made her, on a subconscious level, responsible for not taking care of herself, not setting boundaries. Because what she learned on a very young age is, I have to be there for other people. And what I need and what I feel and what I think and what my goals are not important. So it's actually quite a miracle that she became because she was already a successful entrepreneur at that point. But when she became aware of the pattern, that was the first step. And then when we started to work on the beliefs and replacing the limiting belief for empowering beliefs, I think she grew her company like times 4, wow, which I had never expected it to do that well. So yeah, that's we are still in contact, and I check in every now and then. And she's not in my coaching anymore, but I'm really grateful for that experience. It was amazing. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about communication. What are some effective communication strategies that you can help entrepreneurs with?
The first one is to become aware of your own communication skills. So what I mean by that is, we have within NLP a model of communication which basically explains how your communication is formed.
Mm-hmm. Before you go further, could you explain for the ones who haven't heard of it before what NLP means?
Yeah, so great question. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And if I were to condense it into one sentence, which is pretty impossible, but hey, here we go. It's all about communicating effectively with yourself and with the world around you, and how to be adaptive in your communication. So to come back to your question, what are some strategies you can adopt? The first one is know your own communication. Know when you are, I think the correct word is being triggered, and what behavior you display in your communication patterns when you are being triggered. So why are you triggered, right?
Do you have an example?
Yeah. So one of the things that can trigger us, or at least has an influence on the way we perceive the world, which then influences the way we communicate, are memories, right? So if I have a memory of presenting in front of the class say, middle school, and I was being laughed at because I was a horrible presenter. I was uncertain of myself. I was a fragile young boy, right? And I was basically made to do a presentation. Everyone laughed at me. So what's the memory? The memory is I'm being laughed at. I'm being ridiculed in front of an entire class. So out of the memory comes the conclusion, right? The decision, I am the worst, in my case, presenter of all times. So there's a couple of things that happen. First off, on a subconscious level, there's a negative belief installed. I am not good at presenting, which influences the way I go through life at a later point. So imagine it influences whether or not I volunteer to do a presentation at work, right? Which could be an opportunity to be seen by senior management, for example. But it also does another thing. Whenever I am being laughed at, on a subconscious level, I'm being triggered back to the memory of when my entire class laughed at me. And given my subconscious belief, what I'll probably do is I'll become silent and soft-spoken. And you can usually watch it even have a physical impact, right? Because people tend to make themselves physically smaller as well, right? So that's the first thing, becoming aware of your own patterns and where you can be triggered or not. Because once again, awareness creates the possibility for change by presenting a choice. And once you become aware of the choice, it's your responsibility, right? So that's also where accountability comes in. Because it takes away the ability, not completely, but it takes the rational ability to blame others. Because it's you who are able to change. You can't change the past, but you can change how you perceive the past and how you react to it now that you're an adult. Okay, the second part of your question is, how do you connect in your communication with others, right? So on the surface level, what helps is communication has three parts to it. You have verbal, so it's the language we use. It's our physiology, so our body language, and our tonality. So it's the rhythm, the tempo, the volume we speak with, right? So what you can do is, and this takes practice and awareness, is become aware of the speaking patterns of others. What words are they using? Is someone using very visual language? Like, I see what you mean, and I can see the picture in front of me, and ask them to describe their last holiday. And if they describe it very visually, or maybe they talk about feelings, what their feelings. But it's something you can adjust to by incorporating core keywords in your language. Because on a subconscious level, it makes us connect to one another. And we cannot help it. It works every time. And it's not a matter of influencing someone. It's about making a connection, right? Because you're not taking away the conscious choice from another person. You just make it easier for yourself and the other person to connect with each other. Same goes for body language. You can partly mirror, I would suggest, the body language of the other. So for example, we have a connection, right? Would you agree?
I would think so, yeah.
So for us, it's easy. And usually if people already have a connection, you can see that the body language will be similar, right?
Subconsciously,
on a subconscious level.
Yeah.
But what if we are not in connection? We haven't met yet, or I don't know you that well yet. There's small gestures you can mirror partly, because if you mirror someone fully, it becomes awkward, right? So that means I'm going to do this, which is awkward.
Yeah, it would be awkward if I see you do that.
Yeah, but if I see you lean a bit more forward, I can also lean a bit more forward, or I can use one hand instead of two hands.
Yeah. And if I would lean backwards, then you would do the same, and not every time, but just very
And the principle is follow first, lead later. So what I mean by that is the following is you mirroring the pattern in communication of the other. Once there is a connection, you will eventually see that the other one is following you. And it's not about being submissive or being leader versus follower, but it's all about making a connection and going, that's what I believe in, going in a mutually agreed direction. right? Because what you would like in communication is to both reach your respective goals. So that's why some people who come to me think that NLP is used for manipulating people, which is definitely not the case. If that's what you're here for, then I'm going to have to politely tell you that that is not the case and that I'm not for you.
Yeah, but it actually can be used for it. Though,
I know
right?
there's people using it that way, and that is obviously their choice, but it's not the way I teach it. And people like people. People connect with people. So I think if you use it to manipulate other people, most people will know and will feel that they're being manipulated, right? Because there is some inauthenticity about it, right?
But how quickly can that be? Some people are pretty good at getting away with.
Yeah, there are naturals. But then you go, I think when we're discussing that kind of behavior, it's almost psychopathological. And I think most people, you recognize the feeling. I think we all can agree we have met some people which raise the red flag immediately without knowing why. Or people you meet, whether it's at work, social events, or whatever, and you automatically know the other person is not being themselves. And we can connect to it because we know what it is to not be ourselves, right? Because people tend to be really aware of what other people can think of them, with an exclamation mark of can think. Because and what helped me, I've spent the better part of my life playing a role, because I used to think that other people thought that I should make different choices or that I should go a certain direction in my life. And once I learned, and I think it's a beautiful quote as well, again, not mine, we stop worrying about what other people think about us when we realize how seldom they do.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, most people are busy with themselves.
With their other lives.
Yeah, with their own lives.
And even if I am thinking about what other people are doing, usually it's in relation to myself. It's not even a judgment. It's usually what can I learn from them, or what do they have what I don't have, or it's really never about the other person. It's usually about me. So if that's the case with me, and I think I'm pretty normal, average day fellow, why would everyone else do something different, right? Which actually, it gave me a lot of peace, because it takes a lot of energy away from negative thinking and from worrying about what other people think or what they may do, worrying about the future, which is pretty useless.
Well, why is that pretty useless?
I think it was Epictetus or Seneca who said this. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. So what we are really good at is imagining what can go wrong. But how often does what can go wrong actually go wrong?
True.
So there's nothing wrong with making a plan B. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Don't get me wrong. Especially as an entrepreneur, you have to think of some things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
But when you catch yourself becoming anxious, right, that's where the balance is shifting the wrong way.
So it's not per se not thinking about the future, not at all. It's not worrying too much about it.
Yes.
Take precautions in the things that you have in control.
Exactly. Have a plan B.
Yeah.
Trust in your plan A. Have a plan B. Leave it there and stay in the present moment. Because, and once again, that's also where control comes into play. Realize that you cannot control what happens to you. You can control how you perceive what happens to you, right? So it's also about having trust that you are able to deal with whatever is coming your way. Yeah. And I would go even one step further, and that's also the stoic philosophy, which is called amor fati, embrace fate, right? I mean, and it doesn't make life fun all of a sudden. It doesn't make loss or grief or whatever happens to you fun. But it teaches us that we do not have control over what happens to us to a certain extent. And it teaches us to embrace and to look at the lessons we can learn from that with what is happening to us, right? Which is a totally different mindset than being the victim and being anxious and just worrying all the time. It actually makes you become more stoic and more peaceful, because it hands you a couple of very practical tools which you can apply every day of your life. And once you learn that, that's when life becomes easier, more easy.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned earlier how you end the days. You also touched on how you start the days, gratitude. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So gratitude is something that I was skeptical about at first, and I think it's still a bit stigmatized by a lot of people. And I can see why, because I didn't believe it until I tried it myself, right? Gratitude for me it's more about being in the present moment, being able to be grateful for what I already have. It's not that much about. There's also the law of attraction part to it, right? Which says if you are grateful for what you already have, you can already feel it, and you attract it to the present moment, right? So money, love, whatever.
You believe in that, Michael?
To an extent, but I think, and I will come back to your original question, but I think there's one critical mistake that most people make when looking at the law of attraction. I think when you actually believe that what you want is coming to you, then you start becoming active in realizing that what you are after, right? So when you feel something within your entire being, it's not that the universe suddenly drops it on your doorstep, right? That's not how it works. You are responsible for your own results. But small example, forgive me the expression, but I suck at math, right? I mean,
you're forgiven that you use the word math. That's the word that you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm really bad at it. Always have been. But then again, as I say that, it's a limiting belief. But say when I don't believe I am any good at math, how hard did you think I studied?
Yeah, not that hard, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I just gave up in advance, way in advance. I mean, why should I, right? Because I don't believe I'm any good at it. And I don't believe I'm able to be taught math. I know better now because I'm a couple of years further. And I think the same principle applies to the law of attraction, because I tend to believe I'm a good son, I'm a good coach, I'm a good trainer. So from the belief comes competence, right? Qualities. So if I believe I'm a good coach and trainer, I start chasing and learning how to become a really good coach and trainer. And that's when I can also implement behavior that serves the qualities that I need to be a good trainer. And from there on, I can put myself in an environment where I can utilize all those skills and knowledge to be the best trainer I can be, right? So it's all about belief. And once you believe something to the core of your human being, that's when you start attracting, i.e. acting, because in the word is acting itself, to actually invoke it in your life. So it's all about believing with your full body. And I do believe in that, yeah.
Gratitude.
For me, it's gratitude for, I think it's gratitude for everything. So it's also
the good and the bad. Do you mean that?
Yeah. So it's also being grateful for what happened to me, the pain I endured in my life, and the sadness, everything I missed.
Why though? Why would you be grateful for the pain in your life? So that's not something that we wished upon ourselves, right?
Definitely not. But I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, because it also got me to the point where I'm right now, right? So there's a lesson in it. There's also value in it. Did it hurt me? Yeah. Did I miss some things in my life? Yeah. Absolutely. Did I make some stupid mistakes? More than I can count, right? But we are the best storytellers. We are amazing at storytellers. And the question I ask people is, what story would you like to tell yourself? So what I think is a really practical exercise is, and I use it with my clients, is you get 30 minutes to write down 2 stories. And it's actually one story, but you have 2 versions of them. So you get 50 minutes to write down your drama story. Then you turn it around and you make it your success story. And you read them both aloud to yourself and to someone else. Can be me, can be anyone. Which one do you prefer, right? And which one is more empowering? And it doesn't negate all the pain and the grief and the suffering you've experienced. I mean, for me, it's part of being human. It's part of my life. And I know I have to embrace it to be able to live from it, right? So that's grateful is being grateful for everything. It's, again, amor fati. So embracing fate.
How much time do you give yourself to be writing down? You write them down, the things that you could.
Not necessarily. Sometimes I feel like writing them down, but usually I just stay a couple of minutes in bed. It's not, I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot of time out of your day. It can be just start with 1 minute and build up to 5 minutes or even 3. It's amazing what you can achieve with just a couple of minutes of gratitude every day.
You mentioned twice, I think, a quote from someone else. Mm-hmm. What quote would you give entrepreneurs? Like, this is Michael speaking, and take this quote with you.
That's actually a good question.
Let me say it differently. If you had a magic wand, what would you give what would you wish every entrepreneur to have?
I think it's the gift will be the most important lesson for me as a person, not only as an entrepreneur, in being human in general, is we need, to an extent, we need suffering to grow. And in all suffering, there is a lesson. And it's usually the most painful lessons that are the greatest lessons. So look for your comfort zone and start by exploring the borders. One of my trainers said, we can only know our borders by crossing them, right? And
that's a good one, actually.
Yeah, I love that, really. And as far as obstacles, I love this one. The impediment to action becomes action. So what stands in the way becomes the way. So it's a different view of obstacles. We tend to look at obstacles as something we have to clear and to get out the way, right? But what if the obstacle can become a way to success and to learn and to grow? And for me, that's also the human path. It's part of being human. We need obstacles to grow. If not, there's what else is there to it, right? There's a lesson in everything for me.
So again, the magic wand is learn from the obstacles. It's not given more obstacles. That's not what you would give with your magic wand.
No, it's learn from your obstacles, because that's usually the biggest lesson. I mean, nobody learns from their success, right? Because it's easy to celebrate success, and it's not always easy to replicate it, right? But the bigger growth for me is in the obstacles and also sometimes in the suffering. And beyond that, I think that's the biggest lesson. Sometimes we have to learn to just be in the suffering, be sad, be mad, feel the guilt, feel the loneliness. Because what we tend to do is we tend to shove the negative emotions away, right? They shouldn't be there. I don't want to feel them. And we tend to look at it as our shadow. And that's why I love shadow work, by the way. And it's also what we do with systemic work. Because what happens when you shine light by looking at your shadow? It's no longer your shadow, so you can integrate it. So you don't have to delete anything, right? So the negative becomes the positive. So what's the power behind your shadow? That's what I'm curious about.
Give us more of a sneak peek into your coaching process.
So I usually have a 3-month process. And what I believe is that it usually takes no more than 2 to 3 hours to come to the core of the pattern, which means we have a lot of time to install empowering patterns and beliefs. It's not about breaking patterns, it's about becoming aware. So once we have a clear vision on the pattern, where it came from, we can do an intervention on the pattern. And from there on, it's all about learning how to communicate effectively with yourself, handing the tools to do the work yourself, because I would like to make myself, and I'm looking for the correct term in English, not necessary. I'm not the type of coach who hands out a year plan and says to you, you need at least 20 to 30 sessions. I don't believe in it. I can teach you how to do it yourself and how to implement it in your own life on a practical day without costing you 5 hours out of each day, right? So it's all about making people become self-aware, and I usually 3 months is enough.
How can entrepreneurs book you? A session with you?
The easiest way is via LinkedIn. Just send me a DM. And I have, of course, I have my own website, michaelwiegel.com. That's the easiest way. Yeah.
Thanks.
Or via your podcast.
That's also possible. So via LinkedIn, via your website. Yeah. Just Google you and then you will also pop up. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael Wiegel, for being here and for your wisdom and your insights. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. I had a great time. Thank you for your questions and for your interest and for your curiosity. So, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice.